Thus, even though the Spanish complain about rigid bureaucracy and rules to follow, they don't want to part with it because at least they can trust official protocol was well intended. And if things do go wrong, then they can say, well, I was following the script. Hello, ladies and or gentlemen, boys and or girls, and welcome to the Hispanophiles podcast, Travel in Spain, with only half a brain, proud sponsor of the National Siesta Party. On today's episode, we are getting introspective, we are getting deep, we are discussing the things I wished somebody had told me before I moved to Spain. These are the subtle cultural differences to this fine country that you're not maybe aware you're going to anticipate after you move here that do take a little bit of adjusting to. Many of these are specific to Spain, but a lot of them are also universal. So, for example, if you have no interest in Spain, number one, thank you for being on the podcast anyway. Number two, if you're planning a move to Canada, Japan, Peru, I don't know, some of these are still going to be beneficial to you and the things that you should be thinking about before you take that leap. My name is James Boofery. It's good to have you here. Thank you very much for listening. Before we get into the main talking points of the episode, let's jump into our regular segment, starting with the Spanish news story of the week. This is not a news story per se, but I wanted to share the contents of an infographic that came up on my Instagram feed recently called How Diabetes Rates Vary Across Europe. According to this, apparently Spain has the second highest rate of diabetes in Western Europe. 9.7% of Spaniards aged 20 to 79 are clinically diabetic, so more or less 1 in 10. The only Western European nation in Europe that has a higher rate of diabetes, according to the International Diabetes Federation, in this age group. Can you guess? I'll give you a clue. It's next door. Correct, Portugal, a very similar country culturally to Spain, and 10.5% of Portuguese people between 20 and 79 are clinically diabetic. Now, this is not what I expected because Spain has one of the highest life expectancies in Europe, far lower rates of obesity compared to many other European nations, and also much less heart disease compared to other parts of Europe. So to hear that Spain is on average more diabetic was a bit of a surprise. I will say, of the countries included, the very highest in terms of diabetic rate was Turkey at 16.5%, which seems very, very high. The Balkan countries also were typically very high, 10 to 11% on average. But like I said, in Western Europe specifically, Spain was the second highest. And quite frankly, because they always take the piss out of Brits and our diet, it was also a bit of a revelation and a pleasure to read that the UK, the diabetic rate between people 20 to 79 was 7.4, way lower than I was anticipating. So, take that, Miguel. But it asks the question, what are the Spanish consuming to give themselves diabetes in such high rates? We move on to the Spanish vocabulary of the week. This one cropped up in a meeting at my official corporate boring job this week, un gallinero, which means a chicken house or a chicken coop. Obviously, un gallo is a cockerel, una gallina is a hen, un gallinero would be where they live. But specifically, the reason this came up is because one of my colleagues was talking, and presumably they were sat next to some other colleagues who were being very loud in the background, and their chatter was playing over the call. We could hear it through his microphone, and one of my colleagues said, "Es un gallinero donde estás?" It's like a chicken coop over your end. So it is a Spanish term used to indicate that there is a lot of chatter, a lot of noise going on by people all speaking at the same time, but who aren't really listening to each other. Un gallinero, a chicken coop, people just pop, 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 pop all the time. So regular segments done. Let's move on to the main body, the main talking point of the episode. I wish somebody had told me this before I moved to Spain. These are the things that most shocked us and took some getting used to that we hadn't anticipated about life here in Spain. All of the Hispanophiles team have been living in Spain for a minimum of 5 years, so in comments let me know if there's anything you feel we missed from our list. All of these things I split into 4 segments: the eyes, the mouth, the head, and the heart. You'll see as we go along, each of the things I wish somebody had told me before moving to Spain belongs to one of these 4 categories: eyes, mouth, head, and heart. And we begin with the eyes, chico. They never lie. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that you need to relearn which shops to go to for specific items. I've lived in Germany, I've lived in New Zealand, I've lived in Spain. This is something that always strikes me and I can never get over. In your own country, if you have a specific need, something you need to buy, you know exactly which shop to go to. In the UK, if you're looking for wool, you go to Boyce's. If you're looking for paint, you go to B&Q. If you're looking for a spatula, Tesco should have you. If you're looking for paper clips, WH Smith. But you move to a different country and you have to relearn this. You don't know automatically where you're going to go to for envelopes of a specific size. Thus, if you, for example, move into a new flat, a new home, and you need to buy the weird stuff, get ready for a struggle because it's not going to be obvious to you straight away where to go. Most supermarkets in Spain, for example, Tesco or Walmart in the UK and the US, those are going to be your go-to place for random items. But the supermarkets in Spain don't work that way. They pretty much sell only consumable goods and food, that sort of thing. Thus, in Spain, the best first alternative you go to is going to be the Chinese bazaar. Now, Chinese bazaars in Spain, at the bottom of a particular residential block, you're going to get one of the flats is going to be opened up into just a storage space for random, relatively low quality goods. Anything kitchen, DIY, stationery, paper supplies. The Chinese bazaars are a good place to go to try and find that type of thing. Each neighborhood in the big cities will have a couple, smaller cities and towns will have a couple of Chinese bazaars overall. Very good for anything in the home that is not high price point. So if you're looking for a washing machine, that's not a place to go to. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me how few post boxes there are here. And this is one of those, once you've seen this, you can never unsee it. And I never thought about this, but I asked the Hispanophiles team in our group chat, and Angelique, a fan favourite, shared this one very quickly. In the UK, post boxes are dotted about all around town. You simply walk up to one with your letter in the hand, with the address on the front and a nice stamp of what was the Queen, now the King. Pop it into the little box, and the National Postal Service will collect the mail pretty much once a day, twice I think during the week, bring it to distribution centres from where it makes the journey to its destination, either inside the country or abroad. But in Spain, they don't have post boxes in anywhere near the same abundance. You have to go to a correos. Correos being the Spanish National Postal Service all across Spain. If you go to a Spanish town and you're looking for a post box, you just say to somebody, "Hay correos por aquí," and they will tell you where to go. The bigger cities will have one correos post office per big district. But the point is you have to go there. You can't walk around the corner and put your letter through the letterbox. So another oddity, if you are someone who sends a lot of mail, that's going to be one cultural thing you'll need to get used to. Still on the eyes, and before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me how expensive books are. This is one that is quite specific to me. I am a reader, I am a writer. In the UK, you go to a bookstore, you go to WH Smith's, you go to Waterstone, you're probably going to be paying about £15 for a book with 200, 300 pages. In Spain, over €20 is common. They are more expensive here. I don't know why that is the case, but it seems to be consistent across the country and irrespective of what genre of book you are buying. Another weird thing about Spanish books is the spines. What they print on the spines of the book, it doesn't have the same market norm that we see in the UK. For example, if you go to Waterstones is a good example, you go up to a shelf, the cover faces right, and the text on the spine reads left to right. So you can read going from left to right across the bookshelf. The title's quite easy. In Spain, the market doesn't follow this norm. Some will be left to right, some will be right to left, and therefore you're always tilting your head one way or another to try and read the title on the spine of the book when you're in a bookstore in Spain. No idea why that is the case. Spain, come on, let's be a little bit more sensible here and adopt this market norm if you want to make shopping at bookstores that little bit more convenient. And the very last one in the eyes section, before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that you have to wear a swimming cap in a swimming pool. From the Hispanophiles team, this was Alex's suggestion. Shout out to you. Thank you very much for this one, young sir. Of course, this would be his one. He is a triathlete. He's a fit young man. But ladies, he is happily taken. So, Don't bother him. Slide into my DMs. That's a much better idea. I must say, Italy is a country I also know very well and spend a lot of time there. And this has also been my experience in Italy. Whenever I go to the municipal bath in the town I like to spend time in, it is obligatory to put this damn thing on your head before you jump into the pool. Obviously, this is related to hygiene. Whenever I have gone swimming in the UK, I never recall having to put a swimming cap on my head. So this is clearly cultural. This is clearly a Mediterranean thing. The oddity of it is that I know many of you listening will have been to swimming pools in the vacation resorts around Spain, the places that are built for the giddies, and you will know swimming caps are not necessary for swimming pools in those hotels. So this must just be a norm for swimming pools that are for exercise only. Is it just the done thing to keep hair from straying and coming off and plastering to your face as you come out the water? I don't know, but nevertheless, it is an odd thing that Alex says he has never quite gotten around to understanding here in Spain. The Ice Chico, they never lie, but we have finished part 1. Part 2, we go from eyes to my personal favourite, wink wink, the mouth. And here we have a lot of things to discuss about the oddities of Spanish culture that feel weird to a new arrival. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me how crude Spanish everyday language is. Now, those of you from parts of, let's say, the USA that are very consistently left-leaning, the sensibilities that you have with regards to use of language, particularly where race and skin colour are concerned, I would say Spain is probably not the best country for you to come and live in. The Spanish can be very, very blunt about these things in many regards, and also there are a few sayings the Spanish have which might, quote-unquote, trigger you. The Spanish way to refer to a menial, laborious task that is boring, but you just have to do it, for example, chopping onions, peeling potatoes, faxing, filing, they call it trabajo chino, Chinese work. As many of you will know, the generic Spanish pop culture reference for a convenience store is un paqui. That goes without explanation. I don't think I have to delve into that one particularly. I think that's probably enough examples for now. I am very much politically in the camp of judge people by their actions and not by their words. It is my personal belief that people could do very good deeds while using what others consider horrible language. And I think vice versa also applies. You can be using quote-unquote the right words while being an insufferable arse. Point 2, in the mouth. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that you have to fight your way into a conversation. The Spanish are unequivocally loud talkers. It is a gallinero all the time here. In restaurants they are loud, in the office they are loud talkers on the phone, and they do talk over each other. They often will not have the same level of forbearance that I think Northern Europeans will have, whereby they wait for the person to finish before they make a counterpoint in a discussion or in a conversation. And thus, in a work context, it is really important to take the initiative and be forthright and assertive. Otherwise, if you just sit with your hand up, you're going to get passed by. They have no reservation talking over each other whatsoever. I was leading a meeting. Most of the participants were Italian and Spanish, but one Brit was on the call, very close to me, good guy. And after the call, with the Brit, I took a couple of minutes after the meeting to chat, and I was like, how was I there? Did I hit the tone right? Was I a bit too assertive? Was I a little bit bullish in some regards? He said, yes, very good, very structured, very clear, but just ease up a little bit. You were a bit sharp to cut some people off. I said, fair enough, sorry, I'll bear that in mind. The same day, we had a meeting again. He was there, and he saw me with my hand up in the call, waiting to make a counterpoint, with other Spanish people cutting me off and not acknowledging that I was waiting to make a point. And he was like, I totally get it now. James, you are indeed becoming Spanish. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me how different the norms are around meal times, and this is a huge one if you're not prepared for it. Silvano, comedy legend, fellow stand-up comedian and part of the Hispanophiles team from day one of my day ones, literally shout out to you, this was one of his suggestions. Why do they eat so freaking late all the time? Because the Spanish don't get up late. This is a misconception, I think. A lot of Anglo-Saxon peoples look at the Latin American stereotype of people arriving late, not being punctual, and because of the shared common language being Spanish, they assume people in Spain are exactly the same. Now, my experience is that the Spanish do arrive on time. They do get up early. They are productive in the morning. But they will leave work as soon as they can. 6 p.m., oh, I'm gone. But then why do they eat so late? It is something you will observe. Probably the first non-visual thing you'll pick up on here if you are from the Anglo-Saxon world or an English-speaking country. They do eat very late, often in public, on terraces, in tables, in the street in front of the establishment, the bar, the pub, the restaurant, and often together. That's something we'll come to in a second. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that there are no good soups in this country. Now, if you're a fan of gazpacho, I apologise. I know that's sacrilegious territory for you. Let's move on regardless. This is a point from Alex and Angelique in the Hispanophiles team. Both of them mentioned the same thing. I've never noticed this. But they say the type of chunky, high-quality Marks and Spencer's canned finest soups that you get in the UK, they can't find them here, and they want a good freaking thick soup. Well, guys, it's Christmas soon, and if you've been a good boy and girl this year, maybe Papa Noel will bring you back something nice from the British Isles, where I'll be very, very soon. Have you guys noticed a particular dearth of good soups in Spain? I can't say I have, but if I'm wrong, please let me know in comments. A couple more in the category of the mouth. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that you're not supposed to leave the restaurant in a hurry. Now, this, among the Spanish, is one of the peculiarities of themselves that they most comment on affectionately, what is known as sobremesa. That translates literally as over the table. Now, depending on your, let's say, cognitive disposition, that either sounds like a euphemism for corruption, as in payment over the table, or the alternative is a sexual position. But maybe that's me. Maybe I'm saying more about myself than I need to on this podcast. But as the old Spanish adage goes, quien tiene hambre, solo hay pan. Sobremesa. This is when, after the meal, you will deliberately stay at the table and talk together in a group in a way that is inclusive and animated. So the subject depends on the group, depends on the people and their relationship, but you should avoid anything that is likely to upset or anger. Therefore, anything that is kind of politically partisan, this is not what to talk about at sobremesa, unless you are with people that you know. But complaining about politicians, which is a very popular pastime in Spain, is entirely welcome at sobremesa. How long it lasts? Probably 20 minutes is about the minimum for a sobremesa, but I would say over an hour is not really uncommon. If it's the type of restaurant where they need to get you out so they can get more people in, then yes, they will make very Spanish passive-aggressive overtures to indicate that you've had enough time on the table. But the Spanish do understand that they like to spend a long time having a drink, having a cognac, having a final beer, having a cigarette, having a coffee, doing sobremesa, and therefore the Spanish waiting staff are very, very accommodating always of you taking your time to pay and leave. It is a big part of their culture here. And it is a very important bonding ritual for the Spanish. It is time deliberately taken to connect face-to-face over food and drink, which again has high cultural importance in this country. And it's an opportunity to share news with friends and relatives that you haven't seen for a long time. Sobremesa, get to know. The last one on the mouth is one of the things I've been looking forward to talk about in this episode. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that supermarkets here don't have meal deals. Now, if you're not British, what I just said won't make any sense to you. But to millennial Brits and younger, a meal deal is something of a sacred institution. Certainly, for some reason, British podcasters love discussing meal deals on their episodes. A meal deal is an institution offered by all British supermarkets and even some regular shops, whereby you go to the refrigerated or deli section. There are a small bunch of snacky items that in theory complement each other very well, and you essentially mix and match, normally 3, together for a uniform standard price, normally about £3.50, and that is your meal deal. It will typically consist of one drink that is non-alcoholic. That's an important point. Also, normally quite high-ticket items like Red Bull or Monster. Those are not included in meal deals, but Coca-Cola, Sprite, Fanta, Ribena, those things, yes. So one drink, a sandwich or wrap or salad as a quote-unquote main, and then a side snack, which typically chips or crisps, depending on where you come from, chocolate or fruit. Why do people like meal deals so much in the UK? It's fast. You can go and in 5 minutes at Tesco or Asda or Sainsbury's or wherever, you can pick up your meal for the day. It is cheap, £3.50 if you're struggling for money at the end of the month. Again, you can get something quite tasty and that you know you will like. That's point number 3. The quality is predictable. You know exactly how good the food is going to be. Therefore, you don't have to spend time anxiously wondering, should I go there? Is it going to be worthwhile? And the 4th point, the versatility of what you can put in your meal deal. Also something that people really do find quite attractive. And my generation of Brits, they are obsessed about meal deals. Literally, some podcasts, like I said, will do an entire episode of what is your meal deal choice. And they will banter, they will tease each other about bad choices, good choices. I don't quite get it. Nevertheless, the fact that supermarkets here don't have them is something that Brits always do comment on when they get here. However, I would like to posit that Spain has something even better to offer that tries to solve the problem of people on their lunch break in an office trying to get something cheap, fast, and easy on the go in a supermarket. And the place to go to for this is Mercadona. Mercadona, owned by the Roy family, who also, I think Fernando, his name, is the chairman of Villarreal, and we did an episode on that. Mercadona is owned by the Roy dynasty. And as far as I'm concerned, it is the best supermarket in the country. I love it. If the name Mercadona rings a bell to you, you non-Spaniard, it might come from a famous news story that went viral around the world 2 years ago. Shoppers in Mercadona, I think it was like 7 p.m., 8 p.m., like an agreed time. What they would do is they would put a pineapple inside their trolley as they were shopping to indicate their status as single. So just a single pineapple placed at the end of your trolley, walk around. If you see somebody you like, apparently you nudge your trolley into them, and that is a way for you to indicate your interest in them and to say, I'm single, can I get your number? Or even worse, I don't know. I've never seen somebody do this. I've never known anybody who said, yep, I did that, I tried that. But this became a meme overnight, and I think part of it is, again, a lot of content creators like to abuse the current state of dating and relationships between men and women. Thus, the novelty of doing this as a way to try and meet potential mates. I think that's what made it quite a fun news story and why it kind of became famous all the way over. But it was specific to Mercadona. This was something that you didn't go to other supermarkets to do, only Mercadona. But why do I love Mercadona so much? I thought we'd do a bit of a different segment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Top of the Shops. In at number 5, one of the reasons why I love Mercadona so much, we have the mac and cheese, the microwavable mac and cheese, coming at about €2.40. Delicious, not particularly healthy, but with meat, cheese, and a bit of fat inside. Something that is going to warm your cockles on a cold winter evening. Number 4, coming in at number 4, the Mercadona glazed donuts. Unbelievably tasty. About €1.50 for a pack of 4. Delicious, but please don't overdo it. Coming in at number 3, one of the reasons why Mercadona is the best supermarket in Spain, the jingle. Need I say more? Roll the clip. Mercadona, Mercadona. And coming in at number 2, why I love Mercadona. As mentioned, if you play your cards right, you might just get a sauce you can pop it to stroke your pineapple. Wink, wink. But number 1, the reason why Mercadona is the best supermarket and the reason why Spain doesn't need meal deals is because each Mercadona has a food prep area inside it. Normally 2 microwaves, disposable cutlery, tables, chairs. You can buy food in Mercadona, prepare it, and eat it inside the supermarket. They have their own little cafe, so to speak, not in the way that Morrison's and Asda will do in the UK. You buy your food, you pop it in the microwave, you eat it straight away. And the food you get, it's not just chips, and a sandwich. The things sold by Mercadona for consumption in these little cafes: paella, pork ribs with sautéed potatoes, roast chicken, lentils in gravy, salmon salad, chicken goujons. This is Spain's answer to the meal deal. Actually good, delicious food in proper recipes that you can pick up for €5 or less. So, Mercadona, get to know. That is 2 out of 4 categories done. We move on to the head, the things that take your focus, the things you think about, the things you need to plan very well. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that riders are more dangerous than drivers. Car drivers in Spain. Now, I know everyone knows the Italian stereotype, particularly in Naples. The worst drivers in the world, they all think they are Michael Schumacher. I will say the Spanish are a lot better at driving. They do a lot of honking here in Spain, but with regards to actually putting pedestrians at risk, the Spanish are nowhere near as bad as their Italian counterparts. But scooter riders, this is something that irritates me in my moralistic, absolutist, Anglo-Saxon mind. Stop going onto the pavement. You have an asphalt road designed for your vehicle, but they always do it. It is so normal here. So you, as a pedestrian, after you cross the road, watch your step, because there's probably a scooter coming right behind you. Moving on. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me not to expect sun 365 days a year. Now, this is, of course, a comparison to the British Isles and the North Sea area, where there is constant cloud cover and kind of stop-starty rain. In the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, when it rains, it really goes for it. We get a very big rainstorm probably once every 2 months here in Barcelona, and they are very entertaining. I do love a good rainstorm. But more than that, Spain can be super, super cold. Not on the coast, not on the islands. You get away from that area. You go inland and you go upland. October to March, you are going to be astounded how cold it can get. The first ever time I moved to Spain, 2012, living in Jaén, the centre of rural upland Andalusia. In 2012, it was a very, very cold winter. Below zero at night was common. I moved there with one sweater. No coat, no jacket, nothing of the sort. Stupid move. I had to buy something in my first week from the Chinese bazaar. Unbelievably cold. So if you are going inland, make sure you bring a good suitcase with a good couple jackets and jumpers, because you are going to be caught out if you're thinking it's sunshine every day. 2 more for the head, and the next one is a huge one that every single person coming to live in Spain always talks about and always complains about. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me about the Spanish love-hate relationship with bureaucracy. The most common headache people have in our position, this is what they talk about. The ease of doing business in Spain is similarly lower compared to the UK, the States, maybe Germany, maybe Scandinavia. But while simultaneously complaining about it, the Spanish almost fetishize bureaucracy. You often need prior appointments to many things, most notable government offices, of course, but even places like a bank. I went to my local bank, my local Santander recently, and they told me I could not come in to get customer service, even though I am a customer, without an appointment. Thus, if you are a foreigner planning to move to a new country for the first time, these are things you have to watch out for. And in Spain, yes, they're very dogmatic. They're very rigid with regards to the way in which they stick to protocol, stick to the rules. In a work environment, this is tough. You try to innovate, which again is a very Anglo way of looking at business, but the Spanish response is often reluctance to change anything because they think the way of doing things that has always been done does not need to change, and maybe changing things is going to lead to negative outcomes rather than positive. They simply say, this is not the way we do things. Why is that? Because that's how we've always done it. And you go through this loop of reluctance constantly with the Spanish. It is a personal headache in my work environment right now. And here we come upon an interesting contradiction, a bit of a paradox with the Spanish. Fundamentally, they're not absolutist. You can negotiate prices more easily in corner stores and markets and with food servers. For example, if you go to a store and you're buying a can of whatever and the price is $2.40, you have $2.30 in your pocket, often they'll say, yeah, fine, They don't care about the balance. They'll give you the drink. Not so much in the UK and Germany. That's my experience. Because after a rapport has been made with somebody, the Spanish are very happy cutting corners if they trust you. Now, what I've just said can be dangerous. You, foreigner, do not go assuming you can flirt your way around police action. Do not offer a bribe, never even contemplate it. That is going to get you in a lot of trouble. I know some countries in the world, it is the done thing. Do not come to Spain thinking that will work, because it will not, and you will screw yourself over. Put it that way. What I'm referring to is a phenomenon in Spain known as enchufe, which is basically the plug. If you have enchufe, you have the right strings to pull in a city, in a work environment, even in politics maybe. You have the right strings to pull to make things happen with people who otherwise could be obstacles and barriers. The most common reference is in work permits and planning permits, business, this type of thing. That is what is referred to as enchufe. Having the right connections to make things happen for yourself that the ordinary person could not do. This is where the paradox lies. The Spanish are not absolutist. You can negotiate with them, and if you have a level of rapport, if you have the right contacts, you can get things done outside of regular protocol. But they still are very predisposed to not deviate from protocol, guidelines, and bureaucracy. So how do we get here? How has this happened? Well, I read a great theory in the book Why the Germans Do It Better, written by John Kampfner. In the book, he discusses the German discomfort at improvising and why they always want to stick to plan A, compared to Brits, who he says, culturally, have a far greater tendency to assume things will work out in the end. Thus, for Brits, sticking to plan A is not so necessary in the way it is for Germans. And why does John Kampfner think this is the case? He posits that Germans look back at their own recent modern history and they see a lot of people duped into very poor behaviour and contributing to a very unpleasant era of world history. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. While Brits, on the other hand, look back at the previous 350 years of British history and they see the emergence of the rule of law applied to the monarchy, parliamentary democracy flourishing as a consequence, then private property rights being respected, which fueled a culture of science and innovation, as entrepreneurs understood they could capitalise from invention. This, of course, breeds more invention, which produced a great bunch of products that spurred the Industrial Revolution, whereby Britain's mercantile expansion across the globe set up a global market that Britain could use to obtain cheaper raw materials that it could then produce more cheaply and sell on the global market, giving themselves more money to fuel into the entire system. In this same time period, the Brits ended the transatlantic slave trade. The Brits introduced common law to many parts of the world previously without it, and Britain objectively also improved rights for women in many places where they established a mercantile presence. And then, of course, Britain, quote-unquote, won 2 world wars, and as a consequence of all this, the Brits have a tendency to look back at their history and assume that things are going to go okay for them. We will work it out and we will be on the winning side. The Germans don't think this. The Germans don't trust themselves with improvising and going off script, because historically they think they're incapable of getting to the right decision without guidelines, without protocol, and without dogma. And this explains the Germans' reluctance to improvise. I posit that the Spanish think the same way. You look at the past 500 years of Spanish history. We see the decimation of the Native American population as a direct consequence of Spanish presence, or I should say maybe European presence, on the land, and some serious misery come to those who did survive. We see inside Spain oppression of Jews, Muslims, Gypsies, explicitly so. We see bankruptcy in the early 1600s. We see a slow decline as Spain lost wars against the United Provinces, what later became Netherlands, against Britain, against the USA. 3 civil wars, the 2 Carlist wars in the 19th century, and then, of course, the very destructive Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. We see then Spain having one of the longest serving dictatorships in 20th century European history. And then, at the end of the last century, when Spain finally became part of the EU and the economy was booming and things were going great for Spain, the 2008 market crash hit Spain harder than almost anywhere else in Europe. And all of a sudden, 50% of people below 25 don't have a job. Thus, in the same way John Kampfner theorises Germans reluctance to improvise, I think the Spanish are predisposed to the same self-criticism and the same lack in trust in their own ability to make decisions independently of guideline and protocol. Thus, even though the Spanish complain about rigid bureaucracy and dogma and rules to follow, they don't want to part with it because at least they can trust official protocol was well intended. And if things do go wrong, then they could say, well, I was following the script, I was doing what I was supposed to do. It's not really my fault. But once you have established rapport with somebody and you're on personal terms with them, then you're able to cut corners, and the Spanish are quite happy doing so. Where does this come from? Surely half a millennium of Catholic doctrine forced upon the Spanish must have played a role here. I want to do more reading about the doctrinal differences in Catholicism compared to Protestantism, and what are the corresponding cultural shifts that the Protestant and Catholic parts of Europe experienced as a consequence. This is an area that I want to read more about and hopefully make some content out of that is in some way relevant to Spain. If any of you have good book recommendations on the topic, please feel free to leave them in comments. The very last point in the head, before I move to Spain, I wish someone had told me how unnecessarily long work meetings can be in Spain. I worked for 4 years in Germany in a giant company which has only grown since, now on the German Stock Exchange. That was very international, certainly the marketing department. They needed speakers of Polish, Norwegian, Italian, Danish, and we were a very data-orientated company. If you can't measure it, don't waste your time with it. There's meetings between different departments. We would outline objectives, explore the internal and external landscape, work out where analyses or investigation were needed to be able to add value to the company, and then we'll outline takeaway action points for the next days for the next meeting. But in Spain, I've worked for 4 companies now here in Spain. And in the meetings, there is a lot of talking. Again, people talking over each other, often repeating the same point 3 times. They almost always run over the allocated time. But the Spanish reach conclusions remarkably quickly, which again, relative to my prior experience in Germany, feels very, very foreign and something I'm often a bit uncomfortable with. So they take a long time talking, but they take decisions very, very quickly. And now, boys and girls, we come to section number 4, all matters regarding the heart. 3 main points here, but these ones are a little bit deeper. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that I have to up my game with regards to physical appearance. As we've seen, the stats indicate the Spanish are one of the healthiest nations in Europe. They have the highest life expectancy, as I understand it, in Europe, because they have such a good diet. Obviously, olive oil being a big part of that, and with less consumption of processed food, combined with lots of sunlight, life outdoors, social contact, all of these things make Spanish people very, very healthy. Obesity is a growing problem, but it's still way lower than pretty much every other country in Europe. And thus, you go down to the beach, you go down to Barceloneta, and the amount of six-packs there are in Spain is unbelievable. It is, people are in such good shape, they are so hot, they've got such tight little bodies. You got to up your game with regards to your appearance. Dating apps, exactly the same. People here are so hot, and it is difficult, I think, for one average-looking person to try and stand out. And because they also dress very well, the Spanish do dress well. How do the Spanish dress? I would describe the Spanish style as practical but classy, and more traditional with good blazers, long trousers, often with relatively high leather boots for women. That's quite common to see. The Spanish don't do the German or Italian thing of having lots of brand names on display, which they often think is quite vulgar. The Spanish dress with more colour and more emphasis on natural body shape than, for example, the Scandinavians, where women tend to wear all black or all white and have quite loose-fitting things that avoid presenting a very feminised look, let's put it that way. The Spanish don't have the same urban street style of London particularly, and there's a lot less emphasis on sports utility. I'm thinking, for example, backward caps than you see in the USA. But the Spanish know how to present themselves very well, and they're in good shape. So if you're coming here and you're single, number 1, if you're a woman, get in touch. I'd be happy to talk to you. Number 2, if you want success, you're going to have to step up, dude. Second point, in the heart. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that you have to really persist if you want to improve your Spanish. This is a huge one. The infographics you see, the memes, the street interviews on podcasts, those things would have you believe that the Spanish don't speak English very well. I don't think that's true. Certainly, our generation, i.e., people in the 30s and younger, speak perfectly well. Thus, if you are a native English speaker wanting to learn Spanish, you're going to have to go out your way to make it happen. This is what I call the perennial trap of the Erasmus system. The Danes, the Croats, the Portuguese, the Italians, they go on Erasmus, interact with each other, create their own little friendship group, and they speak English, regardless of where they are. The Brits, we go on Erasmus, and because we're in the same group, speaking English, all we can do is learn how to order fast food in a foreign language. Now, I understand in a globalizing world, or a globalized world, there is an economic benefit of convergence on a single language for business and commerce, and the market, by chance, has chosen that language to be English. But as someone who has spent over 2 decades learning foreign languages, this is a frustration as people go out of their way to take advantage of my presence as a native English speaker, and they respond to me in English, and I wish they didn't. A friend of mine, we had this conversation 10 years ago, and he believes that this is a good thing for us native English speakers because it means there's more demand for fluency for people who speak English fluently in work environments, and we, of course, can benefit. But I would pose, if the world embraces a single language in business environments, in commerce and trade, then we Brits can't develop this extra skill. It's just denied to us because people respond in our own language. Thus, when companies contract and people get laid off, because we don't have that extra skill, we're more expendable. We're the ones who can get the chop. I want to make a public service announcement right now to all non-native English speakers. When a native English speaker speaks to you in your language, please let them. Like, we know you can speak a second language. All we're trying to do is repay the favour. Stop denying us the opportunity to do so by responding in English when we speak to you, in this case, in Spanish. And certainly don't claim you're doing it for our benefit, because it isn't. I see that so often. People saying, we can speak English if you like. No, don't wrap up your selfishness as performative empathy. I don't need you to speak English for me. I want to speak in Spanish. I would argue the person who has given up a previous life, who has moved to a different country, a different part of the world, where a different language is the native language, surely we should reward that person's courage, right? Thus, any Spanish people listening, speak to me and speak to other native English speakers in Spanish, please. I know you want to practice English, but with the internet nowadays, there is no shortage of materials you can access to practice English. There is so many things. So if you're British, Australian, American, South African, Irish, Canadian, you got to mean that, man. You really got to mean it. And you've kind of got to be a little bit combative and force the matter. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it is. And finally, the big one. Before I moved to Spain, I wish someone had told me that loneliness is the price you pay for adventure. Now, being frank, I am a mid-30s Brit who has spent majority of the past 15 years living in different countries, deliberately going out, working, seeing life as it is lived as best as I can in different parts of the world where different cultural norms make everything novel, everything exciting. When I was 20, it was my Erasmus year, and I had one job in Berlin lined up for half a year, another in rural Spain. And thus, my outlook on life has, for the past 15 years, been I am able to go somewhere completely new, find a job, support myself financially, and just, with open eyes, discover so many new things and have an incredible adventure. And that's what I've done for 15 years. But because I haven't stayed in one place, I have not built my own community. I am currently single. I don't have family. The friends I have here, a lot of them are in that phase of life where they are settling down a little more. And of course, it's a bit of a vicious circle. Like if I want to go out on a Friday night, there are increasingly few people who are able to do so. And if I go out and try to meet new people, the people who are age appropriate, there are fewer of them who want to do the same thing. I hold my hand up entirely to the fact that I am responsible for this circumstance I find myself in. But nevertheless, for those of you who are looking to move to another country, you need to make sure that you are a really self-reliant, autonomous person, and you can handle being alone. If you are someone who always needs to be interacting, being with people physically, going to things together, you might struggle. And you need to ask yourself that question before you take the leap. Be proactive. Say yes to opportunity. Try find things you like doing and do them in groups. I was a comedian. That's how I met a bunch of people who were involved with on the podcast. Something like volunteering, a second job in a bar, which is very sociable, exercise clubs, run clubs, or sports teams, religious worship groups, whatever it might be. These things, do them and be proactive and try take advantage of every opportunity you get to speak to someone. Make an effort to meet your neighbours. If you work in a company where lots of young people are very sociable, take advantage of that. Talk to them, socialise with them, hang out with them after work. Honestly, that's something I'm not particularly good at. Just be careful not to be too amorous with them. But do your best, because a lot of people who have lived in their country for a long time don't appreciate that you, the foreigner, are lonely, and they won't therefore automatically think they can help you by inviting you, and therefore they won't. And it is my personal belief that the Spanish are not as good as many other European nationalities at integrating socially with people from other cultures. You are welcome to disagree with that conclusion, but that's how I see it. So before you move to Spain, make sure that you are someone capable of being happy in their own company. And that is the final point. The eyes, the mouth, the head, the heart, we've covered them all. These are the things I wish somebody had told me before I had moved to Spain. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For sure I did. Something way less facts and data orientated. A bit of a talky one, but I quite enjoyed that. We'll move on to the very final regular segment, which of course is the Spanish recommendation of the week. No surprise, I'm going back to Mercadona, and I'm telling you, those sugar glazed donuts are outrageous. 4 for $1.30, something like that. Delicious. Again, don't overdo it. If you're going to eat sugar, go do some exercise afterward and keep yourself healthy. But they are delicious. Guys, thank you very, very much for listening. Thank you for being part of this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, a comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Really happy to have you here, and I hope some of those points were useful for you. If there's anything you think we missed in this episode, by all means, let us know in the comments. And if anything you think we got slightly wrong or maybe could have articulated a different way, also, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much. Have an amazing day, amazing evening, amazing week, amazing year, amazing life. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.